Relationships are the cornerstone of who we are as people of faith. Our relationships with each other are how we learn and grow, and they are a primary way that we give and receive love and grace. Today, as we begin this worship series that focuses on human relationship and community by looking at 5 biblical stories, some better known than others, in the midst of the complexity of the human relationships, we are reminded yet again that God is here showing us the way of connection, mercy, and grace. Today we look at the second creation story in the book of Genesis, a story that has been used both to harm and hopefully to heal.
Today we're doing a reading from the Inclusive Bible because gender plays a role in our understanding of this passage. For example, this passage shows God crafting human beings from clay, initially without gender. Thus, this translation uses the term earth creature to refer to this genderless being. So if you hear a lot of earth creature this, earth creature that, that's what that's about. Pastor Jeff will speak more on that in his sermon. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. At the time when God made the heavens and the earth, there was still no wild bush on the earth, nor had any wild plants sprung up. For God had not yet sent rain on the earth, and there was no human being to till the soil. Instead, a flow of water would well up from the ground and irrigate the soil. So God fashioned an earth creature out of clay of the earth, and blew into its nostrils the breath of life. And the earth creature became a living being. God planted a garden to the east, in Eden, land of pleasure, and placed in it the earth creature that had been made. And God caused every kind of tree, enticing to look at and good to eat, to spring from the soil. In the center of the garden was the tree of life, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river flows through Eden to water the garden, after which it branches into 4 tributaries. The first stream was called Pishon, or Spreader. It circles through Havilah, a land rich in gold of the highest quality. There are gum resins there, and precious onyx stones. The second stream is called Gihon, or Gusher, and it flows through the entire land of Cush. The third stream is the Tigris, which borders Assyria on the east, and the fourth stream is the Euphrates. In reviewing the second half of this creation story, I was reminded of a concept from Psikolohiang Pilipino, which is Filipino psychology according to Virgilio Enriquez. Sorry that this is really niche. But this concept that I thought of when reading this is called kapwa, or shared being. When I first learned of this concept, I heard it summarized through the phrase, I am you and you are me. When I'm sad, you're sad, vice versa. We go through the ups and downs of life together. This concept undergirds Filipino culture, which upholds others, family, friends, community, as not outside the self, but extensions of or part of the self. As we continue with this creation story, I invite you to ponder what might the author have wanted to convey about the relationships between all of God's creations. Then God took the earth creature and settled it in the Garden of Eden so that it might cultivate and care for the land. God commanded the earth creature, "You may eat as much as you like from any of the trees in the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You must not eat from that tree. For on the day that you eat from that tree, that is the day you will die. Yes, die." Then God said, "It is not good for the earth creature to be alone. I will make a fitting companion for it." So from the soil God formed all the various wild beasts and all the birds of the air, and brought them to the earth creature to be named. Whatever the earth creature called each one, that became its name. The earth creature gave names to all the cattle, all the birds of the air, and all the wild animals. But none of them proved to be a fitting companion, so God made the earth creature in 2, then closed up the flesh from its side. God then fashioned the 2 halves into male and female, and presented them to one another. When the male realized what had happened, he exclaimed, "This time, this is the one, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Now, she will be woman, and I will be man, because we are of one flesh."
The house I grew up in didn't have a backyard so much as it had a back dirt. It was the north side of the house. It was surrounded by tall, old maple and oak trees and one locust tree that would drop these long brown seed pods each fall. I don't know how many imaginary miles of road my brother and I built with our Tonka toys and garden trowels. The spigot for the hose was on the south side of the house, and we didn't have a hose long enough to run all the way around to the backyard. So I don't think we made mud pies all that often. I don't have any distinct memories of that. What I do remember is playing in the dirt, that it was very dry and dusty. I suspect it wasn't very fertile. I don't remember coming across any earthworms or bugs as we would play in it, as I'd recreate Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, that children's book. Or when I would build highways like miniature versions of the Everett Turnpike. While I don't remember the backyard dirt having a smell, I do remember once as a teenager digging a hole in a neighbor's yard to plant a rhododendron, and I remember the sound of the shovel cutting through the sod and digging into the dirt. And I remember that as I turned over that shovelful, the soil smelled a rich combination of somehow both decay and life simultaneously. That's the kind of rich soil I imagine when I read this second creation story in Genesis, the creation story we heard today. Especially the part about God making the earth creature, as the Inclusive Bible translates the Hebrew. I think this is one of the best English translations for the Hebrew. The creature God creates, the Adam, is a Hebrew word derived from Adama, which means earth or dust or soil. The Adam was created from the Adama. The earth creature was created from the earth. In verse 5, when we read, "There was no human being to till the soil," we miss the pun. There's a Hebrew pun there. There was no Adam to till the Adama. It's a similar wordplay in English with a similar etymology would be to use human and humus. Unfortunately, this story has been used to oppress women. Genesis 2:18 is typically translated, "Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man, the genderless man, should be alone. I will help him. I will make for him a helper as his partner." The focus tends to be on helper, not on partner. For centuries, men have assumed that this means the partner that God creates is to serve the one that was created first. Their emphasis is on the helper, not the partner. So God goes about creating other creatures, the beasts and the birds, to present to the first earth creature that was created, to name them and to figure out whether or not they are an appropriate partner, an appropriate companion. The answer each time is no, or not quite. Even though each of these animals is created from the Adama the same way the earth creature was created, they still aren't quite the appropriate companion. Making these other creatures the same way I made that first earth creature isn't quite doing what we need, God seems to have concluded. So God made the earth creature fall into a deep sleep. And here, a literal translation, while the earth creature, the Adam, slept, God took one of its sides, can also be translated rib, but it can be translated side. God took one of its sides and closed up the flesh in that place. Then Yahweh made the part that was taken from the Adam into a woman and brought her to the Adam. Up until this point, the Adam has been genderless. The Adam doesn't get a gender until it is split in two. Only at that point does half of the Adam become Ish and the other half become Isha. Only when, at this point, is it appropriate to use gendered pronouns. In similar ways, this story has been used to oppress LGBTQ people. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It's a pity that people who say this miss how the Adam, when first created, was genderless or maybe multi-gendered or gender fluid. It's only when the Adam is split into two beings that the Adam is able to understand its wholeness. It is only when the Ish sees the Isha that he can see the reflection of God's intended wholeness for him. It is only when Ish sees Isha that he understands love. The lesson here is, I think, that only when we see the humanness of others do we grasp our own humanness. I love that when God first tries to make a companion for the Adam, God reaches back into the soil, back into the clay, and forms another creature. It worked pretty well that first time, so why not try again for a different sort of creature, for companionship? The imagery is so earthy, God reaching into the soil again and again to make these earth creatures. God must get dirt under the fingernails in all this work that God's doing. I wonder, with author Cole Arthus Riley, if we knelt down and put our ear to the ground, would it whisper to us, yes, you are made in the image of God, but God made you of me. If we took this story more seriously, which I think can be hard to do when we're fighting against taking it literally, but if we took this story more seriously, would we better understand, better remember that we are all connected, human to human, human to the rest of creation? Would we better remember that we are part of nature? It would serve us well to remember that the earth does not belong to us, rather we belong to the earth. It would serve us well to remember that all things are created and connected. It is the blood that unites us all. Humans did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. And whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. As important as all this is, I want to go back a few verses. This search for a companion for the earth creature starts because God notices it is not good for the earth creature to be alone. Throughout the first creation story, God speaks various aspects of creation into being and then declares that it is good. And when God finishes the sixth day, a very busy day of creation, God notices that it's more than good, it's very good. This verse is the first time, this verse where God decides to look for a companion, is the first time that God says something is not good. This verse is the first time it's not good for the Adam to be alone. The storyteller is saying that God created human beings to be in relationship, that connection is central to our wholeness. Back in 2023, which feels longer ago than just 3 years, then Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy released an advisory called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. It outlined in ways that loneliness functions as a national health crisis in the United States. The report found that loneliness is associated with heart disease, dementia, stroke, anxiety, along with other health concerns, reminding us that our flourishing and wellness depends on human connection, belonging, and relationship. It's as if the Surgeon General discovered this central message from the second creation story. God created us to be grounded in connection. Connection with the rest of creation, connection with each other, connection with God, connection with our own inner selves. And the threats to that connection that we create have become a greater and greater threat. Spurred by the Pope's encyclical on artificial intelligence, pastor and pilot Cameron Tribble reminds us, in Genesis, people are made from dust and breath. This image is grounded, connected, vulnerable, and dependent. In the Christian tradition, wisdom has never just meant collecting information. The Desert Fathers chose silence because they knew noise could harm the soul. Thomas Merton warned years ago that modern people risk becoming so distracted by the outside world that they lose touch with their inner life. And Cameron notes, children today are not just growing up with technology. They are surrounded by systems of behavioral conditioning that are more advanced than anything before. Algorithms figure out what grabs attention, sparks emotion, increases insecurity, and keeps people engaged. AI can now mimic companionship, affirmation, emotional responses, even intimacy. For young minds, it is getting harder to tell the difference between real relationships and performances. Many adults already notice these changes in themselves. Deep reading is harder. Silence often brings anxiety instead of calm. Excuse me. People grab their phones as soon as they feel the slightest bit of boredom or loneliness or unsure or become uncomfortable. I know standing in line at a restaurant, fast food restaurant, I'll admit, a restaurant, I pull out my phone. I think that we've forgotten how to sustain attention. We've forgotten what it means to contemplate. We are lower on patience, find vulnerability riskier, find it more difficult to be present to one another. And we found the ability to remain fully encounterable to one another harder and harder. One of the ways we might guard against or regain the ability to remain fully encounterable to another would be to remember that we are dirt that weeps and laughs and dances and contemplates, as the Reverend Dr. Adam White has said. We are the soil from which a strange and beautiful harvest emerges, and yet dust we remain. This is a limit, yes, and it is also a promise of possibility and worth. Receiving our dirtiness is good news. It's good news that tethers us to the goodness of everything God created. Earth, water, fire, air, flora and fauna, and points us to a shared life. Our dusty nature has grounded us in dust and nature. It reminds us that our goodness is derived from our substance. And I would add that remembering our dusty nature can help us be grounded in connection. Amen.